Hello, I'm Andrew.
Hello, I'm Lisa.
Welcome to episode 56 of...
Round the Archives.
Well, it's a new year, isn't it?
It is, it's 2021.
Gosh, I can't get my head around that. No, this feels weird. Now, what's changed? Not much, really.
Not really, no. We're still in lockdown, so...
Yeah, so we're carrying on as before. A couple of sort of housekeeping things, I guess. We're trying to do more in the gaming line as part of the Round the Archives franchise, aren't we?
Yes.
Can you call it a franchise if you don't make any money on it?
Probably.
But yeah, Warren and I are playing a lot of games online at the moment and trying to broadcast it. Mm-hmm. So if you enjoy Round the Archives and would like to support us, please follow us at Twitch, where our channel is Trowbridge, named after me, Trowbby. Yes. Because I do it, you don't really, do
you? No, I don't play games. I just tell you off when you go to places you shouldn't.
when I get attacked by the Predator.
Yes. I told you not to go there.
Yeah, so we're playing a lot of Fortnite at the moment, but we've got some other games as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we're trying to get 50 followers, and I've only got 13.
Okay, little way to go then.
So yeah, any help greatly appreciated on that front.
Mm-hmm.
But to start the new year off, we're mixing things up a little, aren't we? Because we've got Warren and Martin teaming up.
Yes.
So it's like Holmes and Cummings, isn't it? So they're going to look at the Basil Rathbone films of
Sherlock Holmes.
I really thought it'd be quite nice for us to do something for T'other Bunch today.
Oh, there's dodgy bunch.
And it crossed my mind that they say you're a big fan of the Sherlock Holmes films, the Basil Rathbone...
Rathbone.
Zazbones, yes. Baz and Nige, as we call them, mainly because I can't pronounce the rest of it, you know.
Oh.
And I just thought, hey, we could do it. We could do an item on that.
Yes.
And whether or not... I don't think Round the Archives necessarily needs to be just about telly, you know.
Yes, certainly. You know, Philip St. John Basil Rathbone, to give him his title.
Sounds like he should be running the country. The thing about the Baz and Nige films for me is that I saw them on telly when I was growing up. So I thought, you know, it's enough of a leap.
Yeah. I think you might have seen them at the same time as me on BBC Two on a Friday night.
I think they used to put them on. Well, I think there was a couple of Christmases where they put them on every day. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, that's a few years back. I remember that. I got quite excited about that. My video recorder was rattling away.
But the other thing about those films is I personally think... I mean, some people really think they're cheesy and naff and horrible and rubbish and everything. But I really think that they are the kind of template for Sherlock, the modern.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they are, in the main, they are contemporary. They're made as contemporary visions of Sherlock from Victorian times. So I suppose we should start off by looking at the two that aren't.
Oh, the 20th Century Fox ones, yes.
The original pair, the expensive ones, the ones with a budget.
The ones with the money.
And the one with Robin Hood.
Yes. Which is interesting because Basil played Guy Gisborne, didn't he? He was a baddie, and he was an ace swordsman, apparently.
Oh, yes.
This young Mr. Rathbone.
Yes. Some people are a bit dismissive of Nigel Bruce, but I actually think we've been watching the films pretty much on a daily basis the last few days. I think Nigel Bruce is kind of charming and effortlessly wonderful as Watson.
He is. He gets a bad press, and I don't think it's justified. And I think that little light relief is what you need with a heavy character playing next to Holmes, because Holmes is very emotionless, really, isn't he?
Would you say he's... I mean, whether or not it's the Holmes of the books is debatable in these films. I think it's but I think it's kind of the way people thought about him for 30 odd years.
Oh, absolutely.
Until Jeremy Brett, that was basically people's vision of Sherlock Holmes.
I mean the things like the Douglas Wilmer and the Peter Cushing things hadn't been repeated, so they disappeared out of the psyche of the viewing public. And of course, Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce were constantly being rolled out, either on a late night basis or sort of on BBC Two type times. And it sort of plants itself, doesn't it? And we're from that generation where we take a lot away at that particular point in our lives. And for me, I'm sorry, Sherlock Holmes is Basil Rathbone. And that will cause a lot of bother, I know. Jeremy, but you got to look at it in the context of performance. But that Rathbone could easily walk into a Brett, and they would marvellously outact each other.
Oh, absolutely.
I would love that. That's a wonderful thing. And as you say, it is the seed. It's the seed that Moffat had for Sherlock, and he grew up watching those films.
I also like the fact, and if you watch the films collectively, I like the fact that they've got this little rep company going on.
Oh, it's beautiful, isn't it?
Did you ever used to watch Nero Wolfe, the Nero Wolfe series?
No. It's also,
the one with Timothy Hutton.
Oh.
They did the same thing, and it was kind of the same actors turned up playing different parts in all the episodes, and it's quite a nice way of doing it. So 1 week they're the judge, 1 week they're the villain, 1 week, So you get, is it Gerald Hamer?
Oh yes, yeah.
He's the evil postman in one of them.
Oh, that Scarlet Claw, yes.
Yeah.
That's one of my favourites, is Scarlet Claw. And it's weird, isn't it? Because nothing stays in Britain very long, because Scarlet Claw is French Quebec.
Sherlock Holmes in Washington.
Oh Lord!
Well, that's basically just Elementary.
Yes, it is, isn't it?
Sort of 50 years earlier.
Get him into the States. I know, we'll bung him in a bomber and we'll fly him over to Washington.
Let's pretend we're in that sort of strange view of London that America has. Oh no, let's not bother anymore. Let's just go to America.
That's the thing, isn't it? Even to the opening credits, isn't it, where you have the slide of them walking through the fog, old Victorian fog. It's that impression that the Americans have of Britain. And you make them wonder what they thought modern Britain at that time was like, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I mean, I was talking online the other day about the fish and chip shop scene in Pursuit to Algiers.
Yeah.
And it starts off in this kind of chip shop scene where they're all going, "Oh, chips," and it's the most lavish extent. Have you ever been at a chippy?
It's like somebody's turned an old English coaching inn into a chip shop. Yeah. And they're giving that menu, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. And there's that. Everyone's called Ducky in that one. You see, the other thing about it is if you watch them carefully, you know that street that's also in Frankenstein.
Oh yes,
with the arch at the end of the road, because it's the universal back lot for everything. Isn't it? Let's be honest.
Absolutely.
These are no budget thrillers. They are just brilliant. So should we start at the beginning? You start with The Hound of the Baskervilles, which is a big budget film made in 1939.
39. That was the first one made by 20th Century Fox.
Proper running time. Proper budget, proper sets, or everyone's running around on basically time flight.
It's not that cheap.
No, it's not that small, is it? No, it's a bit bigger. It's a bit bigger. It's
to be honest, the only way that falls down is when we come to the marsh scenes, isn't it? It is a little claustrophobic. But it has, as you say, it has money thrown into it, that one. And it was going to be the beginning of a series. This could be very different, because 20th Century Fox had the rights to make 2 films, and then the rights were evaporated. And so they tried to negotiate with Conan Doyle's estate.
Yes.
And I believe his sons asked for a heck of a lot of money.
As they will.
No, we can't break even in making these films.
No.
And so along came Universal, and they offered the money, and Universal got the rights to make the films. But there was caveats with that as well. And that was the other thing that Conan Doyle said, you can make up to 3 films a year, but 2 of them must be based, at least 2 of them must be based upon the works of Conan Doyle.
At least vaguely.
Vaguely. So that's why sometimes you'll have a slide come up in the Universal ones based on the book of the Napoleons, the Orange Pips, and things like that. And it will have absolutely nothing to do with the content of the book whatsoever.
No, but there are some pips in it.
There's some pips in it, yes.
I mean, one of my favourites, though, is The Adventures.
The Adventures, that's a rip-roaring, isn't it? That is my... Out of those 2 films, that is my favourite. And it's wonderful. And it goes off at a heck of a pace.
And it does have a Captain Mannering and a Sergeant Wilson in it, which always makes me chuckle.
There is unintentional humour there. It's brilliant.
So this is Moriarty George Zucco.
A very good Moriarty. I found him very chilling.
Trying to steal the crown jewels.
Trying to steal the crown jewels. Get your hands off his sceptre, mate.
And dying again. Oh, yes, another dead Moriarty. How many dead Moriartys do we get throughout this?
He dies at the end of... There's... is it Woman in Black, where he jumps across the parapet and grabs hold of a dodgy drain pipe and falls off. There's another falling to his death.
I think she's the Woman in Green.
Oh, Woman in Green, Woman in Black.
But it might be black and white on your television, so that's allowable. The Woman in a shade of grey.
There's another thing to bring up, because the films, I know we're going all over the place here, but the films were colorised, some of them in 2006. And I don't know how you feel about that, but I'm not a great fan of colorisation.
I'm not a huge fan of colorising generally, but that's, again, I'm an old fart for things like that. I mean, it's not, it's just something I don't particularly enjoy, but I understand the kids, all that kind of thing.
So if you take something like The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, so what was the seed that got you interested in that particular one?
I don't know, really. I suspect it's the fact that when you sit down to watch it, you just think, oh, bloody hell, this is just a very good Sherlock Holmes film. I mean, I enjoy the Christopher Plummer ones. I enjoy the whole sort of thing. But because it's got a bit more money and a bit of a longer running time and a little bit more complicated plot, I just think it's one you can wallow in, and it does have all the Victorian trappings and all that. It feels authentic, even though it's completely, pretty much, I don't think there's much that's actually from... Is that the one that's based on the stage play?
It is. It's the William Gillette stage play. Because that was a mixture, the stage play was a mixture of Scandal, The Bohemia, The Final Problem, and Study in Scarlet. I mean, that was a play of 4 acts. Yeah. But, that's very much that case. And it starts with the opening, doesn't it, with Moriarty's on trial. And he's found not guilty. And, of course, we didn't have double jeopardy then.
No.
So he's free to go.
Giving him a bung.
Yeah, absolutely. And off he goes to criticise his butler for not watering his plants. And you ought to flog him, and then that's the baddie. He's going to flog his butler.
If you're going to flog your butler, if you're going to flog your little man.
Oh dear. But Basil's brilliant. Basil has so much gravitas, and I think that comes very much from his classical acting style, hasn't it? Because
is that the one that finishes with Watson the Needle, or is that the other one?
Yes. No,
because what I tend to find with these is there are moments in all of them, and I kind of have to remember. I think, oh yes, there's the one where he's tied up behind the Hitler portrait in the shooting.
Oh, the very bad Hitler, yes.
Yeah. There's the one where they put the paint pot on the back to leave a trail, and I can never remember quite which is which. And when I've been sort of talking about these, you're razor sharp on them. You know which one is which, don't you? You know them that well.
It's a misspent youth. It's absolute misspent youth.
I've been waiting days for the one with the chippy to turn up, so I was quite pleased when that finally turned up.
Have we had the one with the very bad? The majority.
There's Watson singing on the ship. That's quite fun.
Oh gosh, no, yes.
When it's not doing his body bank solve, and I think that's massively dubbed.
Which is strange because Nigel Bruce is Scottish.
Well, maybe it isn't. Maybe it's him singing. I mean, it's possible.
Perhaps it was dubbed afterwards. There's a terrible American singer trying to do a British accent, and I cannot remember now what the life of me she was singing.
Oh, is that in the Hooray and Up She? That's the other one I keep waiting.
Yes,
the Hooray and Up She Rises, or whatever. And of course you do. But the other thing is, you get in the Adventures, you get Baz doing his musical.
Absolutely, yes, straight on
his good old days bit.
I think he absolutely nails that episode doing that piece there. And he comes on, and it's pure musical, isn't it?
Yeah.
Without a shadow of a doubt.
And he suddenly looks about 8 feet tall.
I know, I don't know what they've done to him there. The stripes make him look huge. And then his cod moustache and its straw bow tie.
So we move on to the Universal contemporary version. So he changes his hat, and they actually make a point of him not picking up his deerstalk.
Yes, because Watson says to him,
his trilby or fedora or whatever it
which
is.
is quite a nice reversal, because in Sherlock, Watson's always telling him to put on his deerstalker, isn't he, for the public gaze.
But it's this that you are now in modern times, and of course, this is Britain in the war, isn't it? This is so we actually get a couple of wartime Nazi adventures.
Oh yes, Voice of Terror,
with evil Nazis.
Nazis, yes.
Voice of Terror and the Secret Weapon.
Voice of Terror is quite an odd one, because that opens the new films, and they have because Basil was not too happy about putting them in the modern.
Right.
So they said, "Oh no, we'll get through that. Don't worry, we're explaining." He says, "Well, where's the scene that explains it?" "Oh, don't worry about it." And they show a slide for 30 seconds, but basically,
the immortal Sherlock Holmes.
Yes, he's timeless. Which actually is I know it's a cheap get out, but it's a very nice ploy. It is. He is timeless. You can pick up a book from a bookstall since they've been published so long ago and read it at any time, can't you?
Oh yeah, and the fact that they've made it, like say, they've made series like Elementary, they've made series like Sherlock in the modern era, proves that they were actually onto something back then. You know? And of course, there were a lot of people who believed it was a real person anyway, weren't there? They were still getting letters at the old building society.
Oh, gosh, yes. I was looking on the internet earlier today, and there's questions about Basil Rathbone, and there's a big question forum there. Is Sherlock Holmes real? And there's some wonderful...
Well, my uncle Sherlock would tell you he was, yeah.
And you have the wonderful bonkers conspiracy theorists on there, and it's absolutely fantastic.
Oh, right.
I love things like that, because and this is the thing, to create such a character that in people's psyche that this person is real must hit something rather hard in the head to go, well, actually, is this possible? Yeah. Because he is a timeless entity.
But this series particularly is very much, it's a bit like weekly television, isn't it? I mean, the stories are quite straightforward. Yeah. The running times are about an hour, more or less. Mm-hmm. You know, so it actually feels just like when you show them back to back, it's just like binge watching a TV series, really.
Absolutely, it's like watching a TV movie, isn't it? It's and the concept that Universal were doing were to produce a cheap film they could double bill against something, and it is deliberately designed to be a B movie, but it doesn't end up being a B movie in my eyes. I think it ends up being quite wonderful, because you have Basil starts off very clean cut, doesn't he, in the first two films. And then you sort of move on from Voice of Terror.
Which is the one where his hair gets combed forward.
Yes, his bohemian way. He starts... that was his idea.
Didn't last, did it? Didn't take.
No, they went into dressing room and he was doing makeup, and he says, "I'm not having my hair tidy. I'm bohemian character." He's not going to take much interest in his appearance. So I'm sorry, I'm messing my hair up. So yes, for about a couple of films he had that and was told to rein it in a bit, because they didn't quite appreciate that.
Just a hint of the Billy Hartnells there.
Oh, absolutely. But you must remember at this time as well, as much as Basil says towards the end of his life that he was pigeonholed playing this part, and everybody saw him as Sherlock. He wasn't just in the films, because he was in the radio show as well.
That's true, yes.
And the radio show ran alongside the films, and that's something that never came over here. I've been listening to a couple quite recently, and they're not too bad. And they've got Rathbone, they've got Bruce, and they've got his wonderful housekeeper, Mary Gordon.
All right. So it's basically Big Finish 1942.
Absolutely, yes. With the Daleks in the background.
Well, we like Mrs. Hudson, though. We do like Mrs. Hudson.
Mrs. Hudson.
I mean, and I noticed they keep trying to build up her parts.
Yes.
It's like, because she's doing a bit of like Q in the Bond film. She turns up, does a scene,
Gets off till the next.
in a whole load of films.
She made over 300 films in her life.
Crikey.
And she never played a leading part.
Right.
She was always the person that, almost the Pat Gorman, if you like, of coming on and doing Sherlock Holmes. But she did, over 300 films. It's quite amazing. She was born in Scotland. In fact, most of the main characters, because when I first saw the films, I didn't believe that Dennis Hoey was British.
Who is worth a mention, absolutely.
Yes. Oh, strike me pink. Love a duck. I love it when he says that. Absolutely brilliant. Love a duck.
We were watching the one last night where he wasn't available. Which
Oh,
one was that? Which was Woman in Green.
Mm-hmm.
And Woman in Green is very much a tonal shift from Pursuit to Algiers.
Yes.
Pursuit to Algiers is a jolly romp, really. And then suddenly, I noticed with Woman in Green specifically, is you get this... It starts with a very dry voiceover in the police. It's like a proto-Dixon.
Yes.
In many ways.
Well, they go to Scotland Yard, don't they?
Yes, and this tiny man who's the chief of police walks in.
Yes. And
then starts pointing at a map that's far, far above his head.
And they may as well
With
be
a pointer.
playing Shove Halfpenny. It's what it says. We're good about doing.
And that we get Inspector Gregson for the duration. So.
Absolutely. That's the finger murders.
That's right.
That was and it's followed by a series of clips of hilarious dummies being thrown out of windows at great height.
But this is it. There are brilliant moments throughout the series. There are brilliant moments. I mean, I was thinking back to the Pearl of Death. You've got the Pearl of Death and you've got the Creeper.
Oh,
you've got the great Rondo Hatton, who my generation all learned about from Judge Dredd comics. Mm-hmm. But Rondo Hatton was it theoretically he played lots of monsters because he didn't need makeup because he had this very distinctive face.
He wasn't gifted in the aesthetic department.
Yeah.
Yes, but yes, he's
but
quite
the Creeper,
scary, isn't he?
I feel the Creeper is one of those images that sort of really comes out of it. You know, you've got an episode like Sherlock Holmes faces Death.
Yes.
And you kind of think, doesn't he do that in all of them? You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that the one where his blood is dripping away?
Oh, gosh, yes. You'll slowly die. I shall extract all your blood slowly. Why don't you just shoot him? It's the other thing. I'm a sadistic baddie, so I'm going to do something that's going to be really slow and painful for you that's going to take hours. However, you could be rescued in that time.
Well, there are lovely things like all the villains always refer to him as Mr. Sherlock Holmes. Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
Call blimey, Gav.
Nobody. Oh, yes. You may think you're better than me, but I mean, you should. There's those exchanges where they actually. It's been satirised so beautifully since, but there's these exchanges where the villain and them have a battle of intellects. I think there's a wonderful run. They are. I mean, we can't really talk about all of them, but they are absolutely fabulous. It's a wonderful series of films, and I just think, I'm so grateful that we got to watch them.
Absolutely, because these films may not be about. If it wasn't for the Restoration Society that worked on them in early 2000s, these films won't exist because they were basically killing themselves in their own nitrate in their tins. And get this, listeners, Hugh Hefner, big fan of Basil Rathbone Sherlock Holmes, put a lot of money into having them restored. So it's to Hugh Hefner that we should thank, really.
Yeah. Thank you, Hugh.
Which is not what you expect.
Thank you, Hugh, for all you did.
There's been some very weird fans of Sherlock Holmes. Hitler was a great fan of Sherlock Holmes, not the Rathbone films, obviously, but
no.
He was a great. He had in the bunker. They found a very worn film of the German version of Hound of the Baskervilles,
right?
And it's one of his favourite films.
Okay, that's kind of weird. Is that actually now preserved for the nation because it was in Hitler's bunker?
Yes,
is that the only reason we still have a copy?
That's the only reason. And they found a couple of episodes of Evil of the Daleks in Eva Braun's chest or something.
Oh, if only Hitler had been 20 years... No,
let's not go there. But you've got a stalwart cast in these films. We have a nice, gentle... I think it's gentle charm of Nigel Bruce doing the ham. But he's not too ham. He can be very. He's the passionate person. He used to,
yes. He's always got an eye for the ladies.
Yes, and he does that wonderful duck impression, doesn't he? Which he does in nearly every film he's in. I've seen about 4 or 5 films he's in, and he does that blasted duck impression to children.
What would you say is your favourite moment of the whole series then?
I have to say it's that last few lines from Holmes.
Oh yes, when he suddenly looks at the horizon and does a spontaneous speech based on the words of Mr. Churchill.
Yes, the voice of terror. That strikes home that this is. Would Holmes use the words of Churchill, or would Churchill use the words of Holmes? And it's pure propaganda, and that's how it should be viewed. But I just think it's a wonderful mixture because the two transcend each other wonderfully well. I really do.
And of course, the series of films actually pretty much run in parallel with the Second World War, don't they? You get to the point in the 1945 ones where the war in Europe is effectively over.
Yeah.
So you suddenly get back to London is more back to normal, except for the massive American cars turning the odd corner.
Do you notice some of the cars' steering wheels are wrong side of the road? But you ignore things like that. But your mind tells you the buildings are wrong, the architecture is wrong. However, the characters.
It's an idea of London,
English,
isn't it?
cod English accents. Yeah. But you buy into it. It's a wonderful world to buy into. But unfortunately, by the end of 45 into 46, the last 2 films are very lackluster, and Dress to Kill finishes on a very low note, unfortunately.
Yeah, was it William Roy Neal, or didn't he die or something, and he didn't direct the last one? Or is that the only one he didn't direct, the very last one?
I think it was one of the very last ones that he did. Yeah. And the Basil had really lost.
He did a Connery. I'm not doing any more, and they couldn't find a Lazenby's.
Absolutely. And it was quite sad. I mean, the radio play still went on for another year, and he was replaced. And I can't remember who the devil he was replaced by now. So I can't quite remember who he was replaced by. But the radio plays went on, and then I think Basil's career didn't really hit a height again. No. Since the Holmes films.
But I think there is the fact that Americans still love Sherlock Holmes as a character is probably down to this film series as much as anything.
Absolutely.
And I think my own love for the character probably came from those showings on BBC Two when I was a kid. It really did sort of excite people. They're exciting little films. They may now look a bit cheesy to some people, but they are brilliantly structured and beautifully put together, and they are a good homage to the character, I think. And
absolutely, and we
should be grateful they were on, really.
The use of that lighting and the use of black and white and the shadow. Some of those camera angles are absolutely, and settings are absolutely fantastic to create that atmosphere of menace. And I don't think colour does that. Colour does not do that at all.
Oh yes. Do you think you might have had a slight dream that Hitchcock might have picked up the camera and done a Sherlock Holmes film?
A couple of them, yeah. A couple of times you'll look at it and go, wow. And then
there's an influence there.
Yeah, but yet you may cut to a next scene, and then you could be reminded that this is a low-budget film. But it didn't matter that it was a low-budget film.
And they are very much in the tradition of film noir as well as things like Fritz Lang, the German cinema. There's a lot of expressionist stuff going on in there. So it's I think they're a lot better than people give them credit for, to be honest.
Absolutely. They should never be overlooked. They should absolutely never be overlooked. They should be always viewed. I'll go with The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes being my most favourite. Probably followed by House of Fear. That's an odd one, isn't it?
Yes. House of Fear. Is that the one
with the soldiers? Recovering in the.
Is that the one based on the Musgrave ritual? Is that
yes. Yes.
With the strange wristwatch in the clock tower.
Yes. Yes.
The model work is sometimes a little bit suspect. It's true, but yes, it is basically the Musgrave ritual. Sort of
no, it's not. Name. Sorry, no, that one's not the Musgrave ritual. No, sorry, it's the Orange Pips. It's the people who have. It's the rich people that live in that Scottish castle, isn't it?
Right.
Some of them can seem a little samey. shall we say? No, that's where they all had the insurance policy, didn't they?
Oh yes. So it's not the one set in the home for recovering soldiers, where the one who has the strange on and off smile.
Oh, he has the nervous tick. Yes.
Who then turns up.
Work,
who then turns up as a villain in the next one, and you think, oh, he survived. Oh, wait a minute.
I mean, we go through about 3 different Moriartys, don't we?
Oh yes, at the very least, yes.
Which
then there's what gets me is that Stapleton, who has his strange mirrored shot for his eyes.
Oh yes.
In Hound of the Baskervilles. Then Stapleton turns up as the Crown Prince of wherever. I'm going, oh, it's Stapleton. Oh, he didn't drown in Grimpen Mire after all.
And this is the wonderful thing about an ensemble cast like this. It is right. Which play are we doing next week?
Yeah,
it is very much like that, and I think you get quite comfortable with the characters.
But I just love spotting them turn up again. You know, it's here we go. It's yeah. I like that. I don't know why. I think we're just big fans of Rep. I mean, it's a bit confusing if you were fans of growing up watching The Master, because you would think, oh, it's just the same bloke come back from the dead. But it is just Stapleton. You know, the 6 Stapletons. But
and my favourite occasional character is the chap who played the butler in Scarlet Claw.
Right.
Who's waiting at the pub for the bus. Sorry, at the tavern for the bus. Hoots is hooter, not honks is hooter. He turns up in nearly every one of the films, but he never plays a major part in them. He's always sort of in the background. And he always seems to sort of play either an official role or he's supposed to play a servant of some kind. He's a wonderful character.
There is a thing about in the 40s. There was very much the English actors in Hollywood had a kind of cricket club.
Yes, they did. Yes.
So I think they all kind of knew each other. So this was probably just a jolly outing for them all. Let's all make a film. Hurrah!
I'm so glad you reminded me, because there was a question I wanted to ask you.
Oh right.
Do you think Basil Rathbone influenced David Niven? And I only say that because they are so similar.
I suppose.
And they used to play for that cricket team.
I suspect there's a certain amount of actors probably actually saw themselves in the mirror and thought, I could play those kind of roles.
Yeah.
The interesting thing to me about watching these again is I can never quite work out where the idea that the pencil moustache was a good thing came from. Yeah. It's just that you get in the 30s and 40s, you get William Powell, you get Clark Gable, you get David Niven, and you see quite a lot of characters who are supposed to be suave and sophisticated, and they all have the pencil moustache. And it must have been a bugger to get one sorted. I don't know.
I couldn't. No, I'd have to have a big bushy Jimmy James. I couldn't. How do you maintain a pencil moustache?
But they were the height of sophistication, and so maybe, I mean, because obviously Basil didn't have one. That's the point. He had one in some films, but he didn't have one in the Sherlock Holmes films. No. But apart from that, I think basically David Niven thought, if I grew a pencil moustache and played it like Basil Rathbone, I could have a career.
I think you're bang on the money there.
Similar but different.
I find them sinister. I find pencil moustaches very sinister. It's not quite right. It's not a real moustache, is it?
It's an afterthought.
It is. It's the lady killer look, isn't it? I'm the cad.
We're all very grateful that the toothbrush moustache didn't take off.
The electric toothbrush moustache.
Right, I think we've got enough there.
Yes.
We'll make something out of that.
Thank you, sir.
It's been lovely to talk to you about the Basil Rathbone, Nigel Bruce Sherlock Holmes films, to go through them again today.
Likewise, it's beautiful. It's beautiful to talk to somebody who appreciates them as well.
And you never know, we might try another one of these another time.
Ooh, I hope so.
There's an east wind coming, Watson.
No, I don't think so. Looks like another warm day.
Good old Watson. The one fixed point in a changing age. There's an east wind coming all the same. Such a wind has never blew on England yet. It will be cold and bitter, Watson. And a good many of us may wither before its blast. But it's God's own wind nonetheless. And a greener, better, stronger land will lie in the sunshine when the storm is cleared.
Many thanks to Martin and Warren for that.
Yes, thank you, boys.
And don't forget to tune in to Martin's show of a Sunday evening.
Yes, Vision on Sound.
Yeah.
On Fab Radio International.
And you were on it recently with a big interview, weren't you?
Yeah.
Extra Around the Archives material.
Yes.
So
Yes.
be sure to seek that out.
Yes. And it's Channel 1 if
Indeed.
you go on there.
Yes, I know that. Right, we always sort of say that Around the Archives has got a bit of a family feel, don't we? So we're going to take that literally this time.
Yes.
As Paul and his mum discuss
Neighbours.
Neighbours. Everybody needs good neighbours with a little understanding. You can find the perfect blend. Neighbours should be there for one another. That's when good neighbours become good friends.
Hello, Round the Archives people. It's me, Paul. I'm here with a very special guest. It's my mum. Hi, Mum.
Hi. How are you today?
Oh, I'm all right, thank you. Now, I just want to introduce you to the Round the Archives listeners. They're very interested in TV, and I wanted to talk to you about a TV show that you've been watching pretty much from the beginning, on and off, for the last 35 years. It's a show that I used to watch when in the early days as well, and didn't watch for many years, but then started to about 6-7 years ago. But I'm talking about Neighbours, of course. Do you remember watching it in the very early days, like before it was popular even?
Yes, I do. Bits and pieces. I actually started watching it and stayed with it because the soaps at that time, like Coronation Street, it was all dreary streets and poor houses, whereas the Neighbours had beautiful houses and gardens and spacious. But they never had dishwashers because they were always doing the washing up when things were taking place in the conversations.
Yeah. Because I think we got it a year or two later than it started in Australia, but I think it was possibly only on during the very beginning, just at lunch, like a lunchtime thing, and which was probably why you were able to watch it, because my brother Graham was pretty small, probably still when it first started.
Yes, but it started on BBC, didn't it?
Yeah.
It's only been a relatively short time. How long has it been?
Well, it's been longer than you think. But it's probably over 10 years now, because I've been watching for nearly 10 years. But because I know in Australia it was on one channel and lasted for about a year, and then it got it was in danger of being axed, but then it got picked up by another channel, and some of the cast changed because I know that Scott Robinson, the character that Jason Donovan played, was played by somebody else in the early episodes, and that's one of my first memories of Neighbours, is that I was watching it and I wasn't really used to soap operas, but somehow I knew I maybe had seen the old Scott very briefly, and then this new Scott walked in and I thought, why is he trying to pretend to be Scott? That, they're gonna know it's him immediately as soon as he. I didn't really understand that he'd been recast, because the only thing I knew about things that were recasting with Doctor Who, and he certainly hadn't regenerated. But then they did regenerate some of the other. Lucy Robinson regenerated at least twice.
The Scott and Charlene story, I can remember that. I think that lasted quite a long time, didn't it?
Yes, yeah. And I was saying when I talked about Neighbours with Nick recently, that because we were behind on it, Kylie and Jason had already left the show and were starting to have music success quite soon after. So the two things, they were appearing on Neighbours every day, filmed 18 months before, but they were top of the charts and all sort of. So it did them a good favour, because both things were lined up. You know, the acting and the singing at the same time were both successful.
What is it about Neighbours? I mean, so many of them seem to have gone, well, not hundreds, but quite a few seem to have gone on to have had musical careers. I mean, is that true of other soaps in Australia? Is it a springboard to success in the charts?
I don't know, because not previously. I mean, none of the Australian soaps before Neighbours had lasted like anywhere near as long as this. Sons and Daughters, the one I like, had lasted about 5 or 6 years. Prisoner Cell Block H, about the same amount of time, and a lot of their soaps had lasted that sort of time. Young Doctors and the Sullivans, they'd all lasted less than 10 years. But then it must be just something in the way that they make the show that they kind of decided, well, look at Britain, they've got Coronation Street that's lasted for years, or even EastEnders has lasted for years. And maybe they thought, we want something like that. I mean, it's often been said, I've heard it said, that Neighbours and Home and Away only really continue partly because of the support of the British fans, although now it's on Channel 5, it's a lot more of a minority show. It used to be sort of up there with as many ratings as Coronation Street back in the late 80s and into the 90s, but now I would think it's probably one of the lowest rated ones because it's on Channel 5, and a lot of people don't realise it's still on, but the people who do watch it do enjoy it.
How long has Home and Away been going?
Only a couple of years less. I think that started about 89, so maybe
Are you watching that?
Yeah, I did watch that, and also you used to video Home and Away for me when I lived somewhere without a TV. Because I watched Neighbours and Home and Away probably until I went to university. Then I didn't really have TV or the time to watch it. But then after university, I was living without sort of TV reception, and I think I asked you to video a few things. I don't know why. I must have heard that there was a plot line in Home and Away that was interesting, because I didn't ask you to do Neighbours, even though I still think that I probably was more interested in Neighbours than Home and Away, like when I was still at home. I used to have sticker books and cards and things that you could, you go into the newsagents and you get like, I don't know, you pay £1 and get, I'm not sure how many were in the pack, but 5 or 10, and then you'd trade them with other people who had them. And
it's like old cigarette cards.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, I still have some of those as well. Not the stickers, but the cards. I found some of them last time I went back home and brought them back with me. But
did BBC just end the contract with Neighbours because they were going to try El Dorado?
No, because they kept Neighbours on when El Dorado was on. Of course, El Dorado only lasted about a year. No, because they didn't sell it over to Channel 5 until much more recently. But I think what they did is just thought that they were. I think what happened was that they didn't, when it came to bid for it at that particular time, they probably just thought, I don't know how many ratings it was getting around the time they stopped showing on BBC One, but they probably didn't bid high enough, and Channel 5, because Home and Away obviously is on Channel 5 now, and that used to be on ITV, so it must have all come up around the same time, and Channel 5 sort of grabbed them both.
Stepped in, yeah.
But for many years, obviously, I didn't watch, but you continued to watch on and off, I believe.
Yes, I remember the Robinson family, and I remember bits and pieces. But the trouble is, it's disjointed. I don't really can't tell a full storyline.
You had grandma.
Some of them.
Yeah.
Back, it would come back to me. But I mean, it's a long time, and there's been a lot of characters. And I mean, for example, Paul Robinson with 5 wives.
Yeah, well, that's what
children. That
was one of my favourite things more recently when all his wives turned up. That was very exciting. But also you had grandma duties during the mid-noughties, so that must have made it a bit.
I wouldn't have seen anything then at all.
But then I knew you still sort of watched it, and then I was sort of aware that various different people from Prisoner and Sons and Daughters were making cameos, and I started watching about 8 years ago. And although it was difficult to find a sort of routine, whether I was going to watch it online or like on the website, or whether I was, because I don't think I had Sky to start with. I didn't have like a catch-up system. But anyway, one way or another, I've watched it for probably far longer now than I watched it back in the 80s and early 90s. But you and I sort of have chats about it, don't we? We sort of compare notes about what's going on.
Yeah, and they've always had, whether they've done it on purpose, they seem to have tried to, well, that they have visits to various characters go off to America, but apart from that, they have quite a few travelling from Australia to England and actually film them in England as well, in London. They did one time, I remember. So that they sort of try and keep a bit of connection going.
And they are very good at bringing back, in the time that I've been watching it, bringing back old characters from the time, like obviously Paul did go away for a bit, but then came back, and has probably been back for about 18 years or so now. But there were, other people, Jane and Clive, and the Christmas episode that I spoke about recently, where Jim turned up in a bauble. That was very exciting, even though it was only a little cameo and completely ridiculous.
I was only considering the other day, particularly with programmes like Coronation Street, which were on 5 times a week, and EastEnders, those characters, they can't ever play in anything else, can they? Their job is to be a character in that soap, because it's pretty well a full-time occupation when you're on every weekday for the year, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or do they manage to fit other?
Well, they probably have. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they do, but they manage to fit in there a little bit of holiday, and they tend to write them out and say they've gone off somewhere. But that's probably more for them to have put their feet up for a little bit. But
I mean, Neighbours characters were always coming over to do panto over here, weren't they?
Yeah.
Joe Mangle.
Yeah.
He came and did panto, and I think various other ones. Craig McLachlan, since he's left, he's got his own series. Guy Ritchie, of course, he's done.
No, Guy Pearce.
Guy Pearce, sorry. Guy Pearce. He's done pretty well for himself, and of course Kylie. Yeah, Jason's not done so bad, and he lives over here.
And his daughter's in the show now as well.
Yes.
But I mean, but they're still referring to characters like, I mean, Mrs. Mangle hasn't been in it since the either late 80s or very early 90s, but she's still referred to. There's still her portrait. Now Jane's back, and her daughter is in it. They've been referring to Mrs. Mangle a heck of a lot recently, and there must be people who don't. Well, I mean, they make it clear who she is. You don't have to have seen it. And as I was saying, Nick and I, when we were talking, you can't do a series like that and expect to have to be explaining it all the time. You have to let the new viewers just have to catch up.
Yes, I mean, Harold and Madge. I mean, that went on for a long time, didn't it? And they still referred to time to time, particularly Harold Bishop.
There was that thing involving Ned, who's the painter, and he'd painted lots of characters, and this only happened a couple of 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they just panned across, and there was a portrait of Harold in the background that he'd painted. And because, Harold still exists. I don't think Harold's been in it since about the 30th anniversary, because, of course, he got washed out to sea, and then he came back, and then Madge died. But then around the time of the 30th anniversary, she came back as a ghost, or he was imagining her.
Yes.
And of course, both those actors are still alive, but Harold's not been back in it since, but they still have referred to, because I think the character Toadie had supposed to have gone off and visited him recently, and they'd gone fishing and ended up on a nudist beach or something ridiculous.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm glad that wasn't on camera. That was probably that would have made
it does get quite complicated because of the various divorces and switching and all the rest of it as to who is I mean, I tend to forget who the children to raise, for example.
And some of them were dead as well. So,
what was her previous husband's name?
Yeah, I can't remember, but I know who you mean. But she lost.
Family trees would be very complicated.
Yeah, well, particularly as she's now married into the Robinson family as well. So, but yeah, I think the difference between like Home and Away and Neighbours is Neighbours definitely is a little bit sillier and goes slightly off OTT sometimes. But that's not to say that makes it bad. It's probably a little bit more fantastical, but I'm all for that. So,
you wouldn't want it exactly the same.
No, they are quite. Yeah, they are quite different. Home and Away and Neighbours. As I watch them both, that they don't feel like you're watching, because the settings are completely different.
Yes.
But I mean, one of the reasons I like them is, as you said, it's always sunny, and Home and Away is very much outside. And the thing that happened, of course, this year with Neighbours was that during the COVID thing, that they found a way of working that became the situation where lots of other TV companies had heard that they were managing to do this, and were asking, "How did you do it? How did you do it?" So, it was sort of good that Neighbours was leading the way with.
Yes, I was surprised in a way, as it is so current over here as well as there, that I mean, they do pick up the occasional hand sanitizer and things like that, but generally it's not referred to at all. Yeah,
I think perhaps particularly with Neighbours, like, you feel like it is that bit more escapist anyway. But they probably got hospital dramas which are doing it the same as we have over here. So I mean, to be fair, Home and Away hasn't really been talking about it either. So, because I listened to a podcast called Neighbours, an Australian podcast which I really enjoy, and the good thing about them is that they do take the Mickey out of the show, or the sort of it's not so much not in a completely supportive way. It's one of those things though, when you if you take one of the characters, or if you try to describe all the things that have happened, say, to Paul Robinson, it just sounds ridiculous when you list it all out. And I think it's that side of it, the things when you put it together about characters coming back when you thought they were dead, and twin sisters, and it all sounds ridiculous when you try and describe it, but which makes it perfect fodder for sort of affectionately making fun of it or discussing it. So it makes for a good podcast. But
yes, you have to, as you say, suspend belief to a certain extent, and that the things repeat themselves. I was quite surprised with the Scarlet and Ned plot, that they had that when it was so near to Finn and Bee.
They've had a lot of psychopaths or borderline psychopaths on Neighbours in the last few years. I mean, yes. It's a bit like. I would say it's a bit like, I know you don't watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but the town in Buffy the Vampire Slayer is over at this hellmouth, where that's why they have so many bad things happen on Buffy, supposedly. And I wondered if there was something similar in Neighbours, but related to psychopaths, because yes. there was a time when they were sort of rotating about three different baddies.
They were almost falling over each other. Yeah.
They had Finn, who'd lost his memory and had been sort of horrible. They had the Scarlet character, who was kind of like an obsessive stalker type character, and then they had the twin sisters and the characters coming back. It was. Yeah, I think most of those plots are coming to an end now, so goodness knows what they'll do in 2021. But it's certainly not boring. So, but
how many writers do they have? Do you know?
I don't know. I don't know too much, but what I do know is that some of the actors, some of the actors who played characters have left the show but come back as directors. One of them is actually the current producer, on maternity leave. And it does mean that what they've been quite good at is having people those people who have gone behind the scenes, if they're needed, they will just pop up for little cameos. So you have characters that have left, but they might just pop up for a funeral episode or something, which is always the criticism you get with soap operas, is that like
somebody dies.
Somebody dies and none of their relatives turn up for it. But no, I'm not sure how many writers. Although, again, they have had writers on that podcast I listened to, and they I believe that they're just glad that the fans are enjoying it, and they don't mind. They know it's a bit ridiculous as well, so they don't take it personally. Anyway, well, I just wanted to share with the listeners why, we usually talk about old shows, and this is a case where you could say Neighbours is a very old show. It's 35 years old, but also it's currently going on, and I think it's as good as it's ever been. So I do like the over the top plots, and well, anyway, thank you very much, Mum, for talking to me. We'll have to think of something else we both watch.
Father Brown.
Oh yes, Father Brown. Yes, that's right. The Covenant. We both like the Covenant series of Father Brown. Yes, and I must tell the listeners at the time that they did the Paul McGann Doctor Who movie, and you wrote me a review of how you'd enjoyed it, all the good points and bad points. But we'll talk about that another time.
All right. Bye then.
Okay, bye for now.
Bye.
Everybody needs good neighbors with a little understanding. You can find the perfect blend. Neighbors should be there for one another. That's when good neighbors become friends.
Thank you to Paul and his mum Pat for that lovely article.
Indeed. There's only one thing left to do on this issue already.
Yes.
So it's me and you looking at
Worzel Gummidge and Saucy Nancy.
Good afternoon, Lisa.
Good afternoon, Andrew.
You had a saucy afternoon, haven't you?
Yes.
You spent time in the company of Saucy Nancy.
Yes. 2 versions of Saucy Nancy.
In fact, I've been in the bath with Saucy Nancy.
You have.
Haven't I?
That's another story, though, isn't it?
Well, it is. So, over Christmas, we've had a new Mackenzie Crook Worzel Gummidge, haven't we? So, just want to say what you thought about that, first of all.
I really liked it. It's not as slapstick as the John Pertwee version.
Yeah.
It's more gentle, and it's a really nice family piece. It leaves you feeling sort of really happy, and you want to spend time with that version of Worzel. I think he's a much gentler character. He doesn't sulk as much, and he's not as generally aggravating, which John Pertwee's version of Worzel can be.
But it's interesting. It's now a long time since the character of Saucy Nancy was introduced. Because I was looking through the magnificent Worzel book.
Yes.
From Milk Publishing.
Yes.
And there are 2 radio versions. I hadn't realised there were 2. There's one in 1945 where Worzel is played by Philip Wade. Joan Young is Saucy Nancy. And then there's a 1947 one,
right,
where she reprises the role.
Yeah.
Basically, it's the same story, except Worzel regenerates, and Worzel then is Norman Shelley.
Okay.
So just interesting. Within 2 years, you've got 2 Worzel Gummidges. But I know it from the book, really, because I had Worzel Gummidge and Saucy Nancy. I've got the book here. It cost 25p when I got it. And the date on it is, well, the original publication date is 1947.
Yes.
The edition I've got is the 1972 one with illustrations by Diana Stanley. And that has always influenced what I think of as Saucy Nancy.
Yes.
Interestingly, it says, to Mabel Constanduros with love and gratitude in the front. And I never knew who that was. But who is that?
That is the actress that plays Earthy Mangold in the television version from the 1950s.
Yeah. Of which, that's the thing, all this early stuff, there's no recordings.
No.
It's really frustrating.
No. When a lot of people, when the new version of Worzel Gummidge was announced, a lot of people said, "Oh, it won't be as good as the original version."
The original, and most of them.
And you're like, which version are you talking about? The radio stuff or the television stuff from the 1950s?
Most of the people won't have seen the original.
No,
that's the point.
So, because the John Pertwee version is again another reinterpretation.
Yeah, but the back of the book says, Worzel Gummidge, the scarecrow from Scatterbrook Farm, goes to the seaside and finds a kindred spirit in Saucy Nancy, the ship's figurehead with a taste for salty sea songs. Now, she is literally a carved wooden figure.
Yes.
And the description of her is half a lady, basically, because she hasn't got any legs.
No.
She's got a pointing arm that supposedly always points out to sea.
To sea, yeah.
Now, the description here, she had brightly painted rosy cheeks, and her face was rather beautiful, though it was chipped in places. Her carved hair was painted a shiny black. I do like this book because it does use the phrase young shaver, which Warren will like. It's also got Leave Me Be in it as well, which makes me think of Reuben from Horror of Fang Rock.
Okay.
But yeah, she's also got a sort of a shawl made out of netting, so it's almost like what the Sea Devils wear.
Yes.
But if you were to do Saucy Nancy, the book, as the radio show indicates, you'd have to do it as a multi-part serial.
Yeah.
It's not a single story. There are a series of adventures, because you get Earthy Mangold turning up.
You do
later on as well. In the John Pertwee version, she's never, she doesn't show herself at all. She is vaguely in one story. I think
she's sort of one of the scarecrows in the background, isn't she? At one point.
And in the new version, she sort of has one scene basically, where she packs Worzel. Well, she says it's lunch, but it's mostly a big stone, isn't it? But let's just go through the John Pertwee version, because I made some notes on that, and we'll compare that to how the newer version sort of works.
And obviously we're looking at this in relation to the sad death of Barbara Windsor.
Yeah, I mean, this is partially
Saucy Nancy,
a tribute to Barbara Windsor doing this. But we're talking the 6th of January 1980. And it's the start of season 2 of Worzel Gummidge. Okay. Now, I just like some of the notes here that the Milk Book tells us. There's a bus full of old age pensioners, isn't there? And they're going to go on a trip to the seaside. But the production assistant describes the old age pensioners as naughty, and they kept wandering off and doing things they shouldn't.
You wonder what?
Yes, I do wonder about that.
Well, I do wonder if we shouldn't actually find out what.
This one really dials down John and Sue's involvement. They're at the start and at the end, but they don't actually get to go on the thing. And this is all to do with like children's working days and hours and stuff. So they fudged it a bit. In the new version, of course, John and Sue are the focus characters along with Worzel and Saucy Nancy. So, but here the kids are staying at home and the grown-ups are going to the seaside. Gummidge is not on his pole, is he? He's he's found a poster for the old folks outing, and he's left all his clothes behind.
Yeah, he's somehow got a like a striped jacket and a sort of a straw boater from somewhere. It's never explained where he gets their clothes from.
He's sort of almost dressed as a deck chair, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's got really loud stripes. He's got his bucket and spade, and he's excited about going to the seesaw. It's never actually described what the place is. In the book it's Seashell, and in the new version it's Seashell. Yeah. Because that I noticed that in the first episode it was on a road sign, and I thought, hello, Mackenzie Crook, sort of knows his stuff,
he's
doesn't
looking
he?
ahead.
Yeah. But yeah, when we get there, I think it really shows up how much this Pertwee version does need the film negatives to be
cleaned up.
dealt with,
yeah,
don't
they
they?
look terribly murky.
Yeah, because we say about Barbara Windsor being in this, and linking up with our first article,
Yes.
she's in the James Hill Sherlock Holmes film A Study in Terror.
Yes.
So who's she playing in that?
She plays Annie Chapman, you said.
Yeah.
Didn't you? Yeah, she's completely the wrong age to play Annie Chapman, because Annie Chapman was a good 10, 15 years older than Barbara Windsor.
Yeah.
And obviously not probably quite so good looking, having drunk too much gin.
But I just like the fact that we started with Sherlock Holmes, and Barbara Windsor and Worzel Gummidge give us a Sherlock Holmes.
A different Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, a different Sherlock Holmes. But it's just fascinating how that works. She's on wheels, isn't she?
Yes.
Yeah, which is a sort of rig made by the effects sort of people, and it's worked by remote control. Though apparently the Coast Guard set her off. Because it would pick up stray signals from the Coast Guard, and then she'd go shooting off down the road or something.
There is that scene, and I wonder if that scene where Saucy Nancy's hurtling down the hill is filmed in Lymington again.
All right.
Because it looks a bit like that sort of steepish hill in Lymington, which they use in one of the other stories.
Yeah.
And yeah, I wonder how much she actually did, because you get shots of her face and she's bobbing along, but then you get long shots, which are obviously a dummy.
Yeah, because Lymington, the filming for that is for the Christmas special, isn't it? Cup of tea and a slice of cake. Yeah, they're filming in Devon for this, and apparently the hotels weren't very good.
Okay, I mean, it probably is filmed in Devon,
because
you wouldn't go to Lymington just to film one scene, I would assume.
No. But we'll talk about where it actually is in sort of in terms of the story as well, because it takes them hours to get there on the bus. Gummidge is in the back of the bus, isn't he? He asks a farmer whether it's lunchtime. He says it's 9:30, and by the time they get to the seaside,
it's nearly lunchtime.
It is nearly lunchtime. So he's been in there several hours. In the new version, it's a few miles away, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, they do go on a bus.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it makes it easier in story terms in the new version, because it needs to be close enough for Saucy Nancy to hear her ship.
Yeah. We should point out that the prop version of Barbara Windsor is made by Alistair Boto, who made Cybermen and Emu.
Okay.
Linking us back
to the last issue.
To last time. Okay. So I just like that. It's
yeah.
You know, everything really does join up when you do enough stuff.
Okay.
It's Brixham, actually,
right?
In Devon, though the bus is a bit more local to Southern TV, isn't it? Because it's a what is it? A Buddens bus, UOR 610H, and there's two phone numbers on there: Romsey 515260 and Downton 20282. You said that's too short a number.
Yeah.
And I had to point out to you that in the olden days, I had a 3-figure phone number.
Yeah. In the olden days, in the late 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not that long ago. Well, 40 odd years ago.
Yeah. But I was saying about Worzel's bucket and spade. Did you take a bucket and spade when you went to the seaside?
I think we usually bought a bucket and spade when we got there.
Yeah. Okay.
Didn't take one with us because they never lasted beyond the holiday.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, I remember having a castle-shaped bucket and spade at Bournemouth.
All right, okay.
And making sand castles.
Yeah, because we had a village outing once every August to Weymouth, basically. And it did seem to take a long time to get there. It was quite a long journey.
It's probably because the buses they use are old and clapped out.
But yeah, but Gummidge scoffs all the food in the back of the bus.
Yeah.
I do wonder how his digestive system actually works in real life, because later on he says about the humbugs that he's got are still in his stomach.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think he's got a digestive system as such. I just think it just sits there.
He just sort of guts them and they...
Because I know in the newer version, there's a scene in the second one from last year, The Green Man, where he's having... tea with Mrs. Bloomsbury Barton,
and it all spills out.
It all leaks out. So
apparently all the pensioners are going to get half an ounce of tobacco each.
Yes.
Yeah,
25 grams.
Yeah, the book version shows it's from a really sort of different period, because John is able to go into the local shop and just buy tobacco, no questions asked, for Saucy Nancy to chew, basically. Yeah, there's boiled sweets and fruit if you don't want tobacco.
Yes.
But yeah, they find all the food's gone, and Gummidge blames it on seagulls, doesn't he? Yeah. Then he comes across a bloke with an eye patch and a peg leg, doesn't he? As he says. Yeah, because he's well, it's a model of the gold. It's not a model, is it? It's a sort of replica of the Golden Hind.
No, it's the Saucy Nancy.
Yeah,
he says, "Welcome aboard the Saucy Nancy."
Yeah, but in real life, it's the Golden Hind, which is still at Devon.
It is,
yeah.
Or a copy of
There's
it.
a nice sly line about a telephone box as well for Pertwee's benefit. And it's 10p to go on board.
Yeah.
Wow. Is he overcharging, do you think?
I don't know.
He's got a parrot. How good an actor do you think his parrot is?
It's okay. I'm not sure it makes the noises himself.
Yeah. But yeah, so he goes off to lunch, and then we see Barbara. Well, I don't know how they've done it, because she's sort of leaning forward on the front of the ship.
They've obviously sort of just got her to sort of stand in front of the ship. It's just to do with angles, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the same way now they can film people with a screen in between them and you can't see it. So.
Yeah. But it's implied that the crowman taught her to speak, isn't it?
Yes, because it says that she says she was going to be a scarecrow.
Yeah, because again in the book she's on dry land and she's sort of pining to go back to the sea. I mean, there is a scene where they put her in the bath at one point and sluice her with salty water. She's still got her arms sticking up though, so that's the thing. In the new version, I did like the bit where Gummidge breaks through the wire fence in the shape of him with his arms outstretched.
Yes.
Because, in the books that's how he walks all the time. But I only got it on the second viewing. Yeah. That was a sort of nod to it. Mm-hmm. So Worzel and Saucy Nancy go for a walk and a roll along the seafront.
Mm-hmm. Harbour front.
Yeah, cause she does flash her wheels.
She does,
and he's terribly overexcited at that, isn't he? Like, he has a bit of a funny turn. So there's meanwhile Aunt Sally is with a sort of fair, isn't she?
I should have left her there.
Yeah, Gummidge thinks she was going to America or something. I like that. That's a reference to the books as well, America, because Earthy Mangold was going to walk to America. Mm-hmm. Yeah. She was sort of walking and the sea was slowly going out, and eventually she got some way out and saw some lights and thought it was America.
Right.
But then the sea changed its mind and came back. So, yeah. Because ultimately in the book, Saucy Nancy ends up on an island with her finger pointing out to sea, and they put a lantern on her to warn the ships off the dangerous rocks. Okay. That's a nice ending to her story. Mm-hmm. But for the new version, it's implied that this is sometime after, because they already know each other. That's the thing. It works quite well in continuity. In some ways, the Pertwee version is the odd one out in terms of the continuity.
They just use the characters. They don't use any of the story, really.
Yeah. The new version allows you to have the other Saucy Nancy adventures that are in the books. Yeah. We've said about people playing Saucy Nancy, but technically John Pertwee has as well, and Jessica Martin for the audiobook versions. Because there is Worzel Gummidge Takes a Holiday, which was the really hard one to track down, but thankfully Jessica's done a reading of it. And in that version, Saucy Nancy is very much in charge of Aunt Sally. Aunt Sally sort of is crew basically on her barge. In this version, in the Pertwee version, it's a much more sort of competitive, competitive relationship. Other places Saucy Nancy has been include Iceland, Denmark, and Portsmouth. So she's been all over. It just makes me think of like New York, Paris, Peckham. But yeah, the circus people have got Aunt Sally, and she's going to get repainted, or going to. Gummidge and Saucy Nancy go off to find some seafood, basically, don't they? Cockles, winkles, and whelks, isn't it? Yes. There's room for comedy in all of those. So who's serving the cockles then?
It's Roy Evans.
Who's speaking though?
Jeffrey Bowden.
Yeah, Roy's been overdubbed.
It's not terribly well dubbed.
Aren't you allowed to be Welsh if you're at the seaside?
Obviously not, no. But yeah, I don't know who dubbed it, but the mouth and the voice don't quite...
Well, you do know who dubbed it.
Well,
Jeffrey Bowden, but who actually did the edit?
Who did the edit?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, it'll be on the credits.
Yes, it's It could have been better.
Yeah. They tried to play with the Spanish doubloon.
Yes. You would have thought he might be quite happy to take,
given that it's gold. Yeah. So it does look like a bit like a chocolate coin you get on your tree, but hey. So we get to the first chase scene. I couldn't almost see what happened, but sort of Gummidge takes a bite of some winkles or something,
yeah.
and they run off.
Well, run and roll.
Aunt Sally's legs are sticking out of a laundry basket, isn't it? So I like the way he recognises her legs. Mm-hmm. The OAPs have gone off to the Lobster Pot, which is a sort of cafe, I suppose, in a nod to Mike Berry's supposed drinking. Mm-hmm. He wants to go to the Goat and Compasses. Now, given that he's the bus driver, that could have ended very badly, couldn't it?
Well, he does say earlier on that he's going to be in charge of the boxes of beer.
Yeah.
And you're like, is that a good idea when you're driving a coach full of people?
Yeah. Aunt Sally claimed she was floating to Egypt.
Yes. Where she's going to marry a prince.
Don't know about that. Yeah, she was fished out with a boat hook, wasn't she? Mm-hmm. Yeah. But then Wurzel's recognised, you get what I call OAP chase scene.
Yeah, number one.
So you get various groups all sort of aiming for them, don't they? And they sort of meet in the middle at a sort of crossroadsy bit. And I just wrote, how did they get away? Yeah. Because you've got one lot running from sort of down the street, and another lot running up the street, and a third lot running from
somewhere else,
some other angle. And then you just cut and they've escaped. Yeah. I don't understand that. I like the thing about Aunt Sally won't speak to Saucy Nancy because polite society needs her to be introduced.
Yes.
I sometimes use that. If I used to be in the high street and people would sort of want me to do a survey and I'd raise my hat and say, I'm sorry, we haven't been introduced, and walk quickly on. And it always used to confuse the hell out of them because, obviously polite society isn't very common around here. But
no.
Saucy Nancy claims that her face has been handed down from the Vikings.
Yes.
I don't know quite how that works.
No.
Yeah, and there's lines about piece of driftwood as well, which is what she thinks Aunt Sally looks like. So they have a sort of fight over Worzel, basically, don't they? Because you say Aunt Sally doesn't really like Worzel, but then she's jealous. Is she sort of jealous?
Yeah, I think she is. She's possessive.
Yeah.
I think she doesn't necessarily want to marry him, but she doesn't want anybody else to have him either. She likes the attention.
Yeah.
It's a completely selfish reaction.
His arm basically gets pulled off.
Yeah.
I don't know, he gets it back on again, because he's on again at some point, isn't it? Saucy Nancy is pushed downhill and into the sea. And then she's sort of fished out and she goes back. Goes back to the ship. Aunt Sally ends up on a park bench. Well, not a park bench, a bench.
A bench.
On the seafront. They've got some sticks of rock as well, haven't they? Which
were for the children.
Which are supposedly for the children, but they're in the back. They end up in the back of the bus with Aunt Sally and Worzel, and of course they don't last long. I like the thing about trying to get the old lady back on the bus, and
stuck in the doorway.
Yeah, she's stuck, and a winkle pin up the comes in useful, doesn't it? Yes. So the back home, John and Susan are like, what are they doing? They're in a bit of a pond, aren't
Perhaps
they?
they're looking for tadpoles.
Oh, maybe.
I was going to say they're shrimping, but they won't be shrimping, would they?
Not there.
Tadpoles, probably.
And Mike Berry wants to go after the coach and horses now, doesn't he? Because he's missed out on his beer all day. And all the sticks of rock have been eaten.
Well, all two.
Well,
you would have got more than 2 sticks of rock, wouldn't you?
I still got some rock in the cupboard.
Yeah, that's probably not good now.
I should have a suck on it, but it's probably... Well, I don't know, it's sugar, it should last, shouldn't it?
Yeah, it might have gone funny.
It's gone Fausty, Probably gone all soft. Yeah. And the only question remaining is which way does Worzel fall, and it's...
Backwards.
No, it's not, it's forwards. It's forwards!
Duh.
I said it was going to be backwards, and then it was forwards.
It was forwards, yeah.
But I mean, you're right. It is. There is a lot of slapstick in this one.
Yeah.
Much less than there is either in the book or in the newer version.
Yeah.
And it's very much horses for courses. I think it's quite nice in that you've got these, 3 or 4 available versions. You've got the book, you've got the audio version, you've got the new version, you've got Pertwee. So it depends what mood you're in, which one you're going to watch.
Yeah.
I certainly sort of have to give them credit on the new versions for taking. I noticed how they took their time with this episode.
Yeah.
The pacing was very gentle. I thought there was very little jeopardy or anything like that. It was just a nice journey, wasn't it? Yeah.
I like it, the new version, because the characters, there isn't a character in it who isn't somebody you'd want to spend time with.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Worzel, as I say, this version of Worzel is much more gentle, and he's a much nicer person to spend time with, because obviously in the book and in the Pertwee version, he sulks.
Yeah.
Whereas in this, he only sulks if a human comes near him, and it's an instinctive reaction. He can't stop himself. But it's nice. It sort of makes you feel all warm and fuzzy. I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
But we should probably say as well a little about the way Barbara Windsor plays the character.
Yes. All right. Yes. Yeah.
Because obviously she doesn't. She's not quite as Cockney as she is in some things.
No.
It's a bit softer, but it's not. She's not trying to do any kind of accent.
Yeah.
She's recognisable as Barbara Windsor, and I think she does it pretty well.
Yeah.
I mean, I like her outfit because I'd not really thought about how much it looks like it's been carved.
Mm.
It's got sort of whirls which look like sort of knots and things on it. So, I mean, obviously she doesn't look anything like the pictures in the book, but they I have to say they do look rather manly.
Yeah.
They don't match up with the description inside necessarily.
No.
And in the new version, Shirley Henderson, for some reason she's got a lamb. There's no explanation why she has a lamb.
I don't know where this lamb stroke pig, as she calls
but
it.
It's quite sweet. And she's got a few salty expletives. I know Mackenzie Crook said that he had to be careful when he wrote them, because some of them did actually sound a bit too, and he's like, oh no, perhaps we better not use that one. None of them are actually swear words, but they're all headed that way.
Well, you don't know, because there's a bit where a tractor goes past and she's drowned out, so I'm just interested to know what was in the script for that, because she's clearly having to say something.
Yes.
And I don't know. Yeah. But so I certainly enjoyed comparing them as well. I think it's sort of instructive that the way you can take those characters and do completely different things with them, and they both work in their own way.
They do.
Yeah.
They do. I mean, the John Pertwee version is, for many, it is the definitive version, but it's interesting to watch, and John Pertwee is always good, and all of the other characters. But I think out of the two versions, I prefer the newer version.
That's the thing. If you only know the John Pertwee version, I don't think you're getting the full sort of broad spectrum of approaches that work for these characters. And I just find that fascinating, that you can do it in three completely different ways, and that they're all good.
Yeah, I mean, again, these characters are like Shakespeare characters in that you can reinvent them for whenever you're writing for them, and they still work.
Yeah, because if you there's some central things here about sort of magic and humour and things like that, but the spin you put on them can be very, very different. And then so I'd say the lesson here is don't fixate on
one version.
There being only one way to do things. Sometimes,
no.
As as the years go on, these characters do adapt, and I think that's the true test of real, proper characters. That they're not just fixated in one time period.
Because we did wonder when we found out they were bringing it back whether it would work in the modern day, but it really does.
But this is the thing: 1940s, 1980s, 2020s.
Yeah. So it's every
that's quite instructive. I think that there's a good lesson there to be had. That you look back and you look forward, and one at some point in the future there will be another. There will be another incarnation of Worzel Gummidge, and it will be totally different.
Yes. Hopefully not the one in New York City.
Yeah, there are ways you can't do this as well. That's true as well. But there you go. So I enjoyed doing that. So thank you much for that, Lisa.
No problem. Thank you.
So thank you to everyone for this listening to this episode. Possibly a bit shorter. I'm not sure yet. But And thank you for joining us. We'll be back again in February.
Yes.
With I don't know what yet.
No.
It's going to be a mystery.
It is.
So we shall see you all again. So bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks very much.
That was episode 56 of Around the Archives.
Starring Lisa Parker, Andrew Trowbridge, Martin Holmes, Warren Cummings, Paul Chandler and Pat Chandler.
On the musical side, you heard Dan Tate and Paul Chandler.
The script for Worzel and the Saucy Nancy was by Keith Waterhouse and Willis Hall.
And the producer was James Hill.